What's up, boys? We're back with another video with your boy Rome. We got a little bit of arms on the agenda today. Nothing too crazy, nothing too bonkers. It's a nice, beautiful Friday. It took long enough here in Michigan for this nice weather to come around. But with that being said, we got an arm day. Nothing too crazy, like I stated earlier. I feel like it's gonna be a quick one. I got all my cardio done this morning. I woke up, my body's like a time clock now. Wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day to do my cardio. Whether I want to or not, my body won't let me go back to sleep until we get it done, which I'm grateful for. Thank you, body, for waking me up and keeping me accountable. But with that being said, I did wake up at 5 in the morning. I did an hour, about an hour and a half, just under an hour and a half in cardio. So I got all that done. So we pretty much just got the lift today, boys. We just got the lift today. But I'm going to go ahead, get inside. I already took my pre straight to the dome, so I'm getting the itchies a little bit. So we're going to go ahead, get inside, and hit some arms. But I'll catch you boys in the gym. All right, boys, we got a little bit of triceps. We're going to start with triceps here. After this, we'll rotate over to biceps. But I kind of want to drop a little bit of knowledge on you boys. Hold on. I kind of want to drop a little bit of knowledge on you boys. I was talking to one of my boys at the gym yesterday, and I realized I really haven't even dropped any content on maybe how you guys could diet or just get ready for the summer. If you just want to be beach ready, I kind of want to be able to give you guys that knowledge, give you guys that information. So at least when June, July comes around, or 4th of July comes around, you want to go to the beach, you can look good for the beach, or you can at least know how to prepare to look good for that day when you do end up going to the beach. So I'm going to drop a little bit of knowledge for you boys, but I'm going to go ahead and hit this first set. That felt good. That felt good, boys. That was a nice first set. And like I said before, this is handle. I kind of like to incorporate. It is necessarily for back movements, strictly back movements, but I enjoy it for push downs. It kind of allows me to hit the head at a different angle, which is kind of nice. But back to what I was trying to talk about earlier, or I brought up before, one of the ways that you can kind of prepare for summer, or if you're just trying to diet but you really don't know where to start, I would recommend kind of doing a 2,000 calorie based diet. Depending on the individual, as you diet, you'll kind of understand what your sensitivity is to carbohydrates, to lipids. Most people just, if you incorporate higher protein, you'll end up growing. But there are individuals that are a little bit more sensitive when it comes to fats. There are individuals that are a little bit more sensitive when it comes to carbs. I'm a little bit more carb sensitive, but my body works really well off of a high carb, high protein, low fat diet, right? So that's one of the things where it's a little contradictory to where I'm carb sensitive, but my body works better with a higher carb diet than, say, fats. But that's just because, and what I mean by carb sensitive is it takes a lot less carbs for my body to be able to fill out, right? But to be able to grow or to be able to cut, my body prefers a carb dense diet compared to a fat dense diet. And that's something you just kind of pick up through the years. That's something you just kind of pick up as you go through multiple cuts and learning your body. You kind of understand, okay, I'm a little bit more sensitive with carbohydrates, and my body may work a little bit better with lipids, right? My body may maybe work a little bit better. I can get leaner, or I can get, I wouldn't necessarily say bigger. I don't know a lot of people that can get bigger off of a high fat diet. Realistically, carbohydrates or a high carbohydrate diet is going to be the diet that really gets that mass. But for cutting sense, if you're an individual that maybe your body works a little bit better with fats when you're trying to slice out, that might be you. That's not me, but that might be you. And kind of, I want to give you guys a little bit of knowledge on where to start, where the baseline should be, and then obviously you can fluctuate the variables from there, just kind of customizing your diet and going forward on how you can look good or just look confident. When you take your shirt off, you want to be confident when you go to the beach. And I want to be able to give you guys a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of tools to be able to get there. So when June or July rolls around, you're like, you know what? I'm going to take my shirt off and I'm going to feel good about it. I don't care. And I mean, you could just be a confident individual. Me personally, I like to be a little bit more leaner just because that's helps with the confidence. Helps with the confidence. Yo, I grew up fucking fat and glasses. And the confidence, it could be better. You know, it could be better. But we'll do another set. Then we'll do a little bit of deep dive into that, boys. We got 2 more sets there. That felt like money, though. I love this movement. I definitely recommend throwing it in, boys. Get your close grip, back row handle. Throw it on a tricep or a cable machine and work on some triceps with it, dude. It's a game changer. I'm telling you right now, it's really good for push-downs. I really enjoy it for push-downs. I'd recommend trying it out for push-downs. I get meaty pumps off of it. But back to the dieting. I would do, or what I would recommend, is starting, if you don't really track your macros or don't really know how many calories you eat in a day, I would start at a baseline 2,000 calories, right? And I would recommend this for individuals that might have a desk job or individuals that might have a construction job, right? Because you can always fluctuate the numbers from there, but it's good to have a baseline, a good starting line. This is where it's going to start. And then obviously as the weeks go on, 2-3 weeks into it, you can kind of see how your body's responding. Okay, at this baseline 2,000 calories, I'm staying at the same weight. Or at this baseline 2,000 calories, I'm growing. I don't necessarily want to grow. I want to lean out. Okay, fantastic. Then we'll pull calories and go the opposite way. Or it could be a situation where 2,000 calories isn't enough. That's well below maintenance for you. And your body's getting flat. You're not necessarily leaning out the way you'd like to. So where you'd be like, okay, maybe we go 2,300 calories. And you'll still be able to get a good lean result, you know? So the baseline that I would recommend is a 2,000 calorie diet, right? I would recommend working with that. And then the ratios, I would do a gram of protein for every pound that you have, right? Say you're a 200-pound man, I'd recommend at least 200 grams of protein. That's going to be able to maintain at least the muscle mass you have. You're not going to be able to grow. You're not going to really shrink. That's going to help sustain what you got, right? I'm going to do the next set and we'll dive a little bit deeper, boys. Woo! But I would recommend kind of at least a gram per pound of body weight. And then you can fluctuate the numbers from there, right? If you're an individual that you're like, oh, I kind of enjoy having a little bit higher protein diet, I want to grow a little bit into the cut, and I train frequently, then I would be like, okay, we can go a little bit higher. Maybe go 1.15, 1.25. How I like to set it up is for, if I'm not doing like a show prep cut, right? I'm just doing a regular cut. I like to have my protein intake 20 to 30 grams above my stage weight, right? So my stage weight right now is 202. So I want to at least intake 222 grams to 232 grams of protein on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously I'll fluctuate the variables from carbs and fats depending on, like, obviously where I'm at calorie-wise. But that's usually my baseline. If I'm just doing a regular cut, I like to kind of use that as the standard to where it's, okay, 20 to 30 grams above my stage weight. And that'll at least help me maintain the muscle mass. If not, maybe grow a little bit into the cut. And that would be optimal, right? If you're like, Rome, I don't plan on competing. I'm not really a competitor like that. That's completely understandable. How I would set it is what your current weight's at. I would then think of a goal weight. What's the goal weight that you're trying to get to? And then apply that same principle to it, right? Say you're a 200-pound man. You're a little bit fluffier. You're probably closer to 20% body fat, right? The goal weight is trying to get to 180. I would then set the protein intake for 200 to 210 grams, just so you're maintaining the muscle mass that you have at that 200-pound weight. Or if you do exceed it and go to 210 grams, then that kind of allows you to not only maintain, but maybe, like I said, just maybe grow into the cut, which would be optimal. I mean, at the end of the day, if we can grow into the cut, that's beautiful. If we can grow while getting lean, that's everybody's goal, right? So that's kind of how I would set up the protein and just be a little bit conscious of that. That's kind of my rule of thumb for protein. Now, with carbohydrates, that really comes into sensitivity. And as you get deeper into your cuts, as you do more cuts, you'll kind of understand how sensitive you are. But for a baseline, what I would do, I would baseline it at least try to match your carbohydrates with your protein, right? So if you're trying to at least match your carbohydrates with your protein, that puts you at about 200 to 210 grams of carbohydrates. Realistically, I would recommend probably 250. You want a majority of your calories coming from carbohydrates because that's going to be the primary source of energy that your body's going to want to use, right? And if you have a higher protein and higher carbohydrate intake diet, if you have a higher protein or higher carbohydrate intake diet, those are two things that are very rarely converted into stored fat, right? To where what's actually going to become stored fat is going to be lipids, right? Which is fats. Lipids are fats. So the conversion rate, if you intake too much protein, your body's just gonna be like, okay, we have enough protein to not only grow, but kind of rebuild those muscles. We're gonna go ahead and convert that into glucose. Very rarely will your body convert protein into stored fat. It would rather much convert that into glucose and then obviously just kind of burn that throughout the day through your daily activities. So with that being said, a high protein diet isn't necessarily bad, and the likelihood of that protein getting stored as fat is very minimal, really. And it really just depends on what type of protein you're intaking. So if you're intaking protein with higher fat contexts, like salmon, maybe a fattier steak, a less lean beef, ground turkey. These are things that usually have a higher fat context compared to like tilapia or chicken. Those are even things that be a little bit higher in fat, or even if you're eating whole eggs, that has a higher fat intake to where obviously on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have egg whites, which are pretty much strictly protein. Then you kind of have to be a little bit more conscious of that and how much you're intaking of that because there is fats. Now, those are healthy fats, and your body is going to work with those and use those more efficiently, but nonetheless, it's fat and will get stored as fat. So I would recommend more protein, right? Because if you don't use it all, if you don't use all the protein you're intaking, your body's just going to convert that into usable energy. And you're just going to burn that throughout the day. So, I mean, a lot of people would be like, oh, you shouldn't intake a lot of protein. I understand because if you intake a lot of protein, my bad. If you intake a lot of protein, it's going to put excess pressure on the kidneys. But with that being said, there are ways to kind of counteract that, right? You can take TUDCA, you can take milk thistle. Things that are going to kind of take that pressure off the kidneys. Well, I want to say TUDCA and milk thistle are more towards the liver, but you kind of get the point. You can take the kidney things that you can get over the counter to really kind of help that. On top of that, you can incorporate spinach. Spinach is a natural kidney detoxer. And then on top of that, just making sure you get in your 1 to 2 gallons of water per day. That really allows you to flush out those kidneys to make sure that that excess protein isn't just sitting there. So, I mean, like I said with earlier, I would recommend intaking a little bit higher protein context, trying to incorporate a little bit more protein, because with that, I find that the higher protein you intake, the more likelihood you are to be able to grow. And I mean, whatever you don't use, your body's just going to convert it into glucose and burn it throughout the day as glucose or carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are glucose, right? And glucose is what your body's going to use as its primary source of energy. That is its preferred fuel, is going to be glucose. But I'm going to do another step, boys. I've been doing a lot of yapping. We're going to get after a little bit of training. But I mean, for the most part today, I kind of want to do some arms. It's a nice little arm day. Beautiful day out there. We got the little drop shed opens. We got some great lighting. But I just kind of want to drop a little bit of knowledge. I was talking, like I said, to one of my boys yesterday, and he was like, I love the videos. I just don't necessarily know how to diet or go about dieting. And I was like, you know what? Let me make a video about that. Let me kind of steer you in the right direction so you can at least get ready for the summer, you know? But let's hit this set, boys. I want to say we got one more there, boys. After that, I want to say we're going to do ropes. After ropes, I might do W bar push downs. Then we'll transition to biceps. We're just going to do 3 triceps, 3 biceps today. Mondays usually are more heavy arm day to where we'll do 4 movements per. A total of 7 movements in total for each muscle group per week. But that leads to, I want to say, 28 sets per muscle group, which I find I've been getting good growth off of that. So that's a win. But like I was stating, a higher protein intake diet is going to be a little bit more optimal, just because not only are you ensuring that you're recovering the muscle, you're building the muscle, but anything it doesn't use, it's just going to convert into glucose and end up using throughout the day, right? How I would structure your fats, this is my personal preference, and again, this comes into your sensitivity, but I find that the money range for a cut is anywhere from 20 to 25% of your overall caloric intake coming from lipids, right? So on average, if you're at a 200 calorie diet, 20 to 25% is going to be about 400 grams of, actually, let me think about that. Yeah, it's going to be about 400 to about maybe 450. No, anywhere, yeah, about 400 to 500 of your overall calories are going to come from fats. Brain fog, my bad. Got that prep brain. There we go. Got that prep brain going on. But you should shoot for at least 400 to 500 of your overall caloric intake coming from fats, right? So how I like to do this, nice rule of thumb, this is one thing that I kind of picked up through the years. When you think of like emergencies, right? Say you have a medical emergency, it's 911. If you have a macro emergency, it's 944, right? Macro emergencies, 944. Medical emergencies, 911. And what I mean by 944 is for every gram of fat you intake, it's going to be 9 calories. For every gram of carbohydrates and every gram of protein you intake, it's going to be 4 calories. So like I said before, medical emergencies, 911, macro emergencies, 944. That allows you for kind of an easy way to understand, or at least get a good grasp of where you're going to be at calorie-wise, to where if you just have okay, I have the macronutrients, I know it's 100 grams of fat, I know it's 125 grams of protein, and not 125 grams of protein, it's probably like, 100 grams of fat, it's probably like 40 to 50 grams of protein, and then realistically, probably another 125, 150 grams of carbohydrates. You can kind of do quick math, calculate that, or even just bust out your phone. You know the 944 method, and you can really apply that and be like, okay, I know where I'm at. I know what this meal is going to cause me. I know what this meal is really going to look like, and then I can kind of account for that for the rest of the week. But I would go for 20 to 25% of your overall net caloric intake coming from lipids, and that's going to be because, like I said, you want to keep that number a little bit lower, just because the thing that's more likely to get stored as fat is going to be fat. I know, kind of crazy, right? That's a crazy thought process. But the likelihood of fat intake is going to be a lot higher for it to convert and transition into stored fat. And that's because fats are going to be one of the last things. Your body, if I were to lay out the order of burning calories, of sources of energy that your body prefers, it goes carbohydrates. After carbohydrates, it goes lipids. After lipids, it goes protein. If you're burning protein, you're burning muscle. We very rarely get down here. We usually stay in between 1 and 2, but there are scenarios where you've pretty much expended all the food you intake that day, or you didn't intake enough food that day, to where now we're dipping into the third category and we're burning overall muscle, right? So your body has to burn through all of its carbohydrates to get to the fat. And you have to think it's pretty much a 2-to-1 ratio when it comes fats to carbohydrates, right? So for every one gram of carb that you intake, calorie-wise, it's going to be half of what the fat would be, right? So say I intake 2 grams of carbs, on the other side, for that to equate to fats, that's going to be 1 gram of fat. So that's where that 2-to-1 ratio is going to come from. just because, like I said before, that 944, it's a little bit more optimal to try to get, if you're going to cheat, I would recommend cheating with a higher protein, higher carbohydrate meal, because your body's going to burn that a lot quicker than it would in a higher fat meal, right? But if you do have a higher fat meal, or do plan to have a meal with a little bit higher fat context, whether you're going out and you know the place is well known for deep fried foods, or you're going to like a fondue place, or just somewhere out that you're like, oh, this will probably, there's going to be foods that have a lot of fat, and I just want to kind of enjoy it. At least you know, hey, okay, let me steer a little bit more towards the protein and carbohydrate things, and then intake the fats. Or if I can't avoid that, if I have to intake the fats, then you can kind of account for that and adjust for it moving forward. But I'm going to hit this set, boys, and we'll start yapping a little bit more. Also, I'm like 5 meals in, boys. How the abs looking? We got some decent lighting. That's how we're looking. A little bloated. I'm about a gallon of water in and 5 meals in so far. But that's how we're looking right now. But back to what we were talking about. Actually, let me go ahead and switch out the handle, then we'll get back to yapping. But I feel like I touched on lipids pretty well, 20 to 25%. And the reason why you want it at 20 to 25% and not lower than that, because if you go lower than that, then it starts to fluctuate your hormones. It starts to pretty much interfere with your overall bodily functions. And it can really take your estrogen. It can affect your testosterone. 20 to 25% is how you're going to keep your hormones in a healthy state, to where it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about necessarily completely tanking my testosterone, or completely spiking my estrogen, or my internal like functionality is running at a decent pace, right? So that 20 to 25% is a recommended spot, just because it allows for your body to keep functioning at a high or moderate functionality, right? So that's what I'd recommend. But I know you're probably thinking, Rome, let's hit this next set. Let's get it. No, all jokes aside, I know you're probably thinking, Rome, if I'm only intaking 400, 500 of my overall calories coming from fats, that leaves me with about 1,600 to 1,500 coming from carbohydrates, right? If I'm intaking 220 grams of protein, or if I'm intaking, we'll just say for baseline, 200 grams of protein, that's 800 calories. That's realistically anywhere from 1,200 to 1,300 calories. That leaves me anywhere from 700 to 800 calories left. Yes, that's going to come from carbohydrates. And then this is something that I'd recommend, that when you're in a diet, I would pull from the carbohydrates, kind of try to keep the protein and fat context consistent through the whole dieting phase. But where we're going to pull the calories is going to be from the carbohydrates, right? As we get deeper into the carbohydrates, as those calories pull, we will pull it more from carbohydrates. Again, it kind of plays into your sensitivity. If you work better with lipids, we'll adjust the lipids, keep the carbohydrates and proteins kind of consistent. But for the majority of people, they work a little bit better with carbohydrates. For the masses, carbohydrates is going to be the go-to. So as you get deeper into the diet, you don't necessarily want to adjust those lipids. You don't necessarily want to adjust those fats. I'm not fats, but protein. You want to kind of keep that at a constant base. You may adjust the fats a little bit, but I mean, that's as you get deeper into the cut, you can kind of fluctuate those numbers depending on the range, right? To keep it in that 20 to 25 range. But with that being said, carbohydrates are going to be mainly where you pull from. And I try to have, when I'm in like a maintain phase, at least a 1-for-1 with carbohydrates. And then for carbohydrates and protein. And then for the bulk, I try to have a 1-for-2 at least, if I'm trying to build mass, a 1-for-2 for protein, right? So if I'm intaking 250 grams of protein, I'm going to at least take 500 grams of carbohydrates, right? And this is deep into the bulk, and obviously it goes up from there. but keeping that baseline of fats 20 to 25%, that's kind of consistent year round. But carbohydrates and protein are going to be the things that may fluctuate a little bit. Carbohydrates are going to fluctuate a lot more than protein will, but that's kind of where you want to push and pull your calories from, right? You're trying to bulk, you're trying to grow, you want to push those carbohydrates, right? Increase those carbohydrates, increase that glucose. And then obviously on the reverse end, if you're trying to cut, you're trying to cut down those carbohydrates, cut those carbohydrates out. And obviously, like I said, this is because that's your primary source of energy. That is going to be your body's preferred source of energy, right? That's going to be the first thing it goes to when it's burning calories throughout the day. When you're sleeping, when you're walking around doing your daily tasks, when you're doing your cardio, when you're training, your body is pulling that energy from carbohydrates, right? Because that is the primary source. The only time that this might not be the sense is if you're in a state of ketosis, which when you're in a state of ketosis or you're on a keto diet, what happens with that is it pretty much flips the order that your body's burning calories, right? So now your primary source of energy that your body's burning is going to come from lipids instead of glucose. And you might think, oh, Romeo, that sounds amazing. But again, if you do that for a long duration, we kind of come back to the hormonal phase thing to where if you're consistently fluctuating that number, that's going to fluctuate your hormones. You're kind of running the risk, right? You're running the risk of messing with your hormones long term. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like a keto or a carnivore diet long term, just because that's a diet that's reliant on higher protein, higher lipids. And then with that lipid fluctuation, it's just going to fluctuate your hormones. That's not something I would recommend. It's very health-wise, it's a little bit better to fluctuate the carbohydrates because those won't affect you as much internally. They really just more have an effect on external factors, right? How you're looking, how you're filling out, how your muscles are growing. That's going to be kind of the extent that the carbohydrates are going to have on your body, to where lipids are more of an internal factor, right? To where, if for my car guys out there, how I like to explain it is, it's like carbohydrates are going to be like your fuel type, right? The cleaner you get with the carbohydrates, obviously, the better it's going to be for your overall car. And then on top of that, there's quick digestive carbohydrates, slow digestive carbohydrates, and I can kind of get into that into a later video. But for car reference, for an analogy, gasoline is going to be carbohydrates, and then lipids are going to be your internal oils. This is going to be your coolant. This is going to be your oil. This is going to be your antifreeze. This is going to be your trans fluid. Things that kind of keep the car functioning, keeping the car running at max capacity. That's going to be your lipids, right? So you don't want to consistently adjust those variables, just because if you're consistently adjusting those variables, you're consistently adjusting those oils, you're consistently adjusting those internal factors that really have a long-term effect on how the car is going to run. But a little bit of tidbit on that. We'll get back to my explanation. I can't remember where I was at. I kind of went on a long rant there, but we're gonna hit a set here, boys. Honestly, we might hit 2 sets before I get back to yapping. Doing a lot of yapping today. All right, felt good. That felt good. We got 2 more there, boys. 2 more. All right, let's hit this next set. One more there, boys. I'm taking another swig of water, and then we'll get up to the next set. I want to adjust the handle. I don't want to necessarily just yap the whole time. I do want to yap, kind of be able to drop that knowledge. But I do want to keep the pump. I'm obviously in here to grow. We're in prep. I want to kind of stay consistent, make sure I'm staying on track. But like I said, I did have a conversation with my boy yesterday. And I was like, you know what? That is a little bit of a knowledge that, like, I would like to be able to share, like to be able to kind of give it to my homies so they can, we can all look good this summer. I'm not trying to gatekeep the 6-pack. I'm trying to make sure we all have 6-packs. If I'm eating or not eating, I want my homies to eat or not eat with me. Obviously not eat as in like we're just all dieting and miserable together, but we're going to look great when we hit the beach. And that's all that matters. So I'm going to take a swig of water and then we'll get up to the next set, boys. All right, let's hit the last set here, boys. And then I'm going to switch the handle. Then we'll get back to yapping a little bit. All right, boys, I'm gonna grab the W handle. We'll set that up, be able to do push downs, and then that'll be able to kind of transition us into biceps, which will be nice. We'll start with wide grip W bar curls, do some rope curls, and then one more variation of curls. And then that'll be it for today. But I'm gonna go grab the handle. I'll be right back, boys. All right, boys. So I feel like we did a decent amount of yapping about lipids. You know, I went on for that. But fats are an important thing, right? They pretty much make sure our body's functioning at a good spot. Make sure we're functioning well internally. You know, make sure everything's kind of moving smoothly, making sure everything's kind of rocking the way we need it to, keeping everything in order, which is a win. Let's get back to the goods. The meat, the bread. I'm talking about the protein and carbohydrates. So, with that being said, you do kind of want to structure it a little bit more protein carbohydrate meal, or at least that's how I'd recommend for the masses, is higher protein, higher carbohydrate, moderate to low fat context is going to be an optimal for a cut. And then obviously you want to fluctuate the numbers right away. But what I would recommend is waiting about 2 weeks. Give your body about 2 to 3 weeks at a certain calorie, right? To get accustomed to that and then adjust from there. After 2 to 3 weeks, usually you can kind of see or at least understand, hey, I'm losing weight or I'm not losing weight. My body's rocking here or my body's not rocking here. So you understand, okay, fantastic. We're moving in the right direction or we're not moving in the right direction. I need to adjust the numbers accountable, right? To where if 2 to 3 weeks go on and you haven't lost any weight and you've kind of stayed where you're at, 2,000 calories of maintenance. If you gained weight, then you're like, okay, 2,000 calories might be a little bit too much. Let's start dropping. If you're losing weight, obviously that's optimal. Then you'd be like, okay, this is right around where we should be. Maybe we fluctuate depending on how much you're losing. Maybe we fluctuate a little bit, or we could stay here, kind of keep the pace, see if we're going to keep dropping at the right pace. You might be thinking, Rome, what's the right pace of calories dropping? I would probably say a pound to 2 pounds a week. Pound to 2 pounds a week is healthy. If you drop more than that within the first couple weeks, that's completely understandable. That's usually just water. That's your body getting accustomed to, dieting. So that first week or two, you might lose 5-6 pounds, right? That's an extreme case, but that might be a scenario where you lose 5-6 pounds that first week and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm in a super deficit. No, you're not in a super deficit. Your body's just kind of flushing all that water off you, right? We're flushing that water off you, and then now we're trying to burn that fat, right? Burn those excess stores of fat. Your body's like, okay, we got all the water out of us. We're done being a water buffalo. We're done being a bear in hibernation. Let's go ahead and get shredded. Let's get shreddy for the summer, But did a lot of yapping here. Moral of the story, I would keep your fat intake in between 20 to 25% of your overall net caloric intake, whatever that may be. And then I would try to match per pound with grams of protein. And then obviously fluctuate the numbers a little bit. If you're trying to grow, maybe have that protein a little bit higher. If you're like, you know what, I'm good with where I'm at, maybe keep that protein at least matching your body weight. I wouldn't necessarily recommend dropping below that because then you're just going to lose muscle mass. And unless you're trying to lose muscle mass, which I don't know anybody that's really trying to do that. If you're trying to do that, I mean, drop it below by all means. But it's kind of a good rule of thumb to at least say, okay, my body weight's at here. I want to intake X amount of protein, right? Or my goal body weight's here. Let me go 20 pounds or set it 20 pounds above that goal weight just to make sure I'm maintaining at least what I had, if not able to grow into the cut. Which a lot of people, especially if you don't train often, if you're kind of just getting into it, you probably will be able to grow into the cut because your body's transitioning into a phase that it hasn't necessarily been in. It's going to adapt, and your body's way of adapting, your body's way of adjusting to working out, training, eating healthier, and increasing the protein intake is going to be by adding muscle mass. So, I mean, for your first cut, especially if you're newer to the game, you might grow into the cut. The likelihood, I'd probably say, of you growing into the cut is probably a lot higher than would be necessary for a veteran lifter. And that's, I mean, good for you. Good for you, At the end of the day, you're getting lean while getting huge. That's a win, brother. We'll take that when we take that. You know what I mean? But I would try to go 1 for 1 body weight per grams of protein. That's a good kind of rule of thumb. And then when we go to the final thing, my favorite thing, because I'm a glutton for glucose, and I'm a glutton for glucose because I love my sweet treats. Yeah, you know what I mean? And sweet treats are usually a little bit heavier in carbohydrates. They do have a moderate amount of fats, but I mean, I'm a baked good guy. So with that being said, it's like, okay, I do kind of have to be conscious that most baked goods are higher in fats. At least a majority of their like a majority of the calories that make up baked goods are going to come from fats. Most people think it's glucose, which I thought was glucose for a long time, but you have to understand it's a lot of oils, a lot of butters. So a lot of the calories in baked goods are going to come from fats, not necessarily carbohydrates, but it still is a higher carbohydrate context. That's why crumble cookies are like 1,000 calories, because they're great cookies, but they use a lot of butter, they use a lot of fats when they're baking it, and when you look at the macros, you might get 100, maybe anywhere from 50 to 100 grams of carbs, and you're like, oh, that's not terrible. 50 to 100 grams of carbs, that's only 200 to 400 calories. That's not terrible at all, right? Then you look at it, it's also 100 grams of lipids. When you think about that, 100 grams of lipids is 900 calories. That's fucking deadly. That's almost half of your caloric intake if you're trying to diet just in one cookie, in one serving, right? You're getting half your calories from fats. And then that's where you can kind of fluctuate. The hormones start to fluctuate. That's where, I mean, you might feel not as great. You're spiking your estrogen. Not only are you spiking your estrogen, you're starting to spike your insulin because you're taking an excess amount of glucose on top of fluctuating those internal oils, which is just overall not good, not bad. But for carbohydrates, I try to keep that at least consistent with the protein while I'm in a cut. And then obviously, as you get deeper in the cut, you can adjust that, take away from the carbohydrates. But if you're trying to maintain, try to keep those at least consistent with one another. And if you're trying to bulk, obviously you want to increase the protein a little bit because the goal is to grow and obviously to grow and recover. Protein's a key phase for that. It's going to be a key thing you want to incorporate. And then obviously we incorporate more carbohydrates the deeper we get into the growth phase. But that's just a little bit of a tidbit. That's how I would recommend a newer person trying to get into the gym to kind of structure their diet. If you're just trying to get ready for the gym, I'm not the gym, but just get ready for summer. 2,000 calorie diet baseline, that's good. And then you can kind of play with the numbers from there. And for the people that are thinking, well, Rome, isn't it a little too late for me to learn my body? It is not. You still have 2 months before it really starts getting nice outside. You have 2 months before the carnivals start. You have 2 months before people start going to the beach or people bust out their boats. So really, you have 2 months to really learn your body, understand where you should be at, and then that'll kind of set you up for a good spot for when summer rolls around. You're like, okay, I'm on my boy's boat and I'm lean. I feel good. I feel green. It kind of allows you to understand your body, learn your body, and then adjust that accordingly. But we're gonna go ahead and get some push downs, boys. I did a lot of yapping today. There's one more thing I want to touch on, yapping wise. But for the most part, for the rest of the lift, I might crack a joke here or there. Talk to you boys a little bit, but I want to kind of focus a little bit more on the lift. So with that being said, let's get these push downs. We got 3 more there, boys. 3 more there. All right, boys. As you can see, I took the shirt off. It's a little toasty. I was like, you know what? We're getting a little bit leaner. I am 5 meals in, so I'm a little fluffy. But I was like, you know what? Let's be that guy today. Let's be that fucking guy. We're in the gym. They got the nice lighting going here. Let's train with the shirt off. I feel comfortable enough to do it now. The abs are in even when I'm obviously full from a majority or almost all my meals. So that's a win. But let's go ahead and get it. We got 2 more there, boys. 2 more sets there. Feel like that's a win. We're over here, cutting. We're cutting. Hold on. See how it looks. bit of a back double for you boys real quick. Boom. But yeah, embarrassed. If you guys can't tell, I'm a nerd. I get embarrassed. I'm a shy guy. It'd be like that. But feeling good. I feel like the cut's moving along. Like I said, I've gotten pretty much all my meals in this morning. I started my morning at 5 in the morning. It is now like 3 going on 4 o'clock. Pretty much got all my meals in. My last meal will be about 6 o'clock. I try to at least space out my meals to where if I eat 6 meals in a day, so try to have all my meals in by 6 p.m. And then obviously my body wakes me up at 5 a.m. I prefer to train with some food behind me, or at least do my cardio behind me. Blah, blah, blah. At least do my cardio with food behind me. So that I usually start my meals in between 5 or 6 in the morning. And then I just try to end them by 6 in the afternoon, right? 12-hour span where I'm eating every 2 hours. If I start them at 5, then it kind of plays out to where I'm eating every 2 hours and 10 minutes. And that's kind of like how I've been doing it for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And it's worked out really well like that. You know, it's been really nice. It's been really good. And then by the time I wake up in the morning, I'm fasted. I get the nice look of me without all my meals, feeling good, feeling great, feeling green, seeing what I'm looking like. And then from there, we'll start. We'll kick it off. But I'm going to go ahead, get this next set, boys. All right, we got one more there. After we do the one more there, we'll go ahead and do a little bit of biceps, boys. Transition onto the biceps. But you might think, Rome, I think we're a little fuller. Rome, we're looking a little fluffy. The abs aren't like fully lined out. Yeah, I get that. But that's because I'm a gallon and a half of water in and 5 of my 6 meals. I've eaten all my carbohydrates for the day. I've eaten majority of my lipids for the day. I've consumed a mass amount of my calories. So I'm gonna be a little fuller, be a little bit fluffier. But I mean, if you guys are over at the Instagram, I plan on dropping. I have check-in Saturday, so I plan on dropping that for you boys. Kind of let you guys see what we look like check-in wise, fresh in the morning. Because I haven't dropped that yet. You guys kind of know what I look like as the day progresses, as the day goes on. But you guys haven't got that fresh in the morning look. So I have check-ins with my coach Saturday, which we just started rocking. I've been coaching myself pretty much all prep. So this whole prep, I've been handling it. But I posted on Instagram. We had a quick conversation. I was like, hey, man, if I'm rocking with anybody, I want to rock with you. If you want to coach me, awesome. My game plan is due to Michigan. After Michigan, we're going for the USAs. And if you want to rock with me, I'd love for you to rock with me. We kind of had a conversation, came to the conclusion that, hey, let's rock. Let's get this done. We have some unfinished business. And I can't elaborate or just, put into words how happy I am to be working back with him. Kind of adds a little bit more comfort back to my peace of mind, because even though I feel like I know enough, I feel green, I feel good, it is nice to have that second pair of eyes, that second individual that can kind of look at me and be like, okay, we are on pace, or we aren't necessarily on pace, which I feel like we've been on pace so far. I feel like everything's been moving in the direction we'd like it to, but it just feels good to be on the team again. I've been rocking with him for the past 3-4 years, and loyalty is a really big thing for me. So like I told him, I was like, hey, if I'm rocking with a coach, I'm rocking with you. I'm fine with rocking alone if you don't want to obviously rock with me just because I've been in prep for so long, and maybe you don't want to kind of hop in mid-prep, and that's understandable. But if you'd like to, if you kind of want to finish out with me, we can finish strong and then go for the pro card, and you want to be able to be there with me, I would love that. And we kind of had that conversation. He was like, dude, we got unfinished business. Let's get after it. I'm like, you're right. Let's get that work. So have check-in Saturday. That's cool. Very excited for that. And then kind of be able to give you guys that look. I'm going to send him the check-ins. After I send him the check-ins, I'm going to go ahead post that on Instagram so you guys can see what we look like fresh in the morning. And when I send in check-ins on the weekends, I do want to kind of drop that every week for the next, we're closer to 9 weeks out now. So for the next 9 weeks, I want to drop every check-in I make or every check-in I send my coach, just so you guys can kind of see what we're looking like fresh in the morning. Most of the time you'll see me with a decent amount of carbohydrates, a decent amount of food behind me, to where I'm like, okay, this is what I look like. You're going to see the fuller version of me, but you're not necessarily going to see the depleted version. And with the extended cuts, I kind of want to incorporate that a little bit more. And I do plan on getting a third gym membership here. So right around 8 weeks out, 7 to 8 weeks out, depending on how I'm looking financially, I want to get the third gym membership, and they have a specific room for posing. So right after my cardio in the morning, I do want to get at least 10 to 20 minutes of posing in, do a lot of freestyle posing, and then just kind of train over there a little bit, just because they do have a lot of machines that I do prefer, especially for legs. I feel like that'll kind of elevate my leg game, and that'll make me that much better for obviously the next 15 weeks that we're in prep. 9 weeks for the first show, another 6 on top of that, so 15 total for the overall shows that I've planned for this year. And I think getting that extra gym membership will allow me to kind of elevate not only my posing, but elevate my training and really make sure I'm bringing the best package I possibly can to stage. So you guys, I mean, until then, you guys would just see the normal check-ins. You guys would see normal check-ins when I send them to them, and then obviously I'll drop them on Instagram for you guys. But I also want to give you, like, when I'm posing, when I'm doing my freestyle posing, that type of stuff in that specific room that they have for posing, I would love to be able to drop that on the extended cut, right? Because I dropped the normal lifting cut, which is just pretty much the intro, the gym, we yap for a little bit, then the outro, and that's the video. But with the extended cut, it's the things that I'm doing on the day-to-day that kind of are incorporated with bodybuilding. So that might be grocery hauls, that might be meal prep, which I do want to do a meal prep video. I just kind of have to map out my kitchen a little bit better, see how I want to set up the angles so you guys can see what I'm making, see how I prepare it. So I've been mapping that out for the past week, but I do want to kind of give you guys everything that goes into the show prep, right? I don't want to just give you the highlight reels. I don't want to just give you the light. I want to give you the work that I'm doing in the shadows, right? The things I'm not necessarily posting, but could post if I wanted to. But again, not necessarily posting because that's shadow work, right? To where I can give you guys the light, but I also want to provide both sides of that spectrum. So you guys get full transparency of how the prep's going to go. But with that being said, let's hit this last set, then we'll move on to biceps, boys. All right, boys. I'm going to set this up for a goal for some curls. Then we'll be able to get after it. But I'll catch you guys when I have it set up for curls. All right, boys. Let's get these curls. We're going to do wide grip curls. I like to do wide grip curls, but I'm thinking for the next two movements, we'll do inner rope curls and then wide pulling out. And that's just to be able to tag the bicep at a different head. We're kind of at a different angle. Hold on, boys. Let me adjust it real quick. Let me go ahead and fix the camera angle. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and get some curls in, boys. We got 3 more there. 3 more there, boys. But if you guys can't tell, if you haven't picked up, obviously I'm a nerd. Obviously, like, you can kind of pick up the subtle things within my videos. If you guys have watched every video, if you've been here from the start, you kind of pick up the little tidbits, little things that I do. So for those of you that don't know, my tattoos are anime references. My favorite anime is Hunter x Hunter. By far one of my favorite animes. And I really enjoy it just for specific reasons, right? But it also kind of is a little bit near and dear to my heart because my sister lived with me for 1.5 years. And she recently just moved out, but we watched that all the way through together. And that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. That was a really nice experience. And then Bleach. So with Bleach, that's just I've watched that since a kid. That's been one of my favorite animes since I was a kid. And that used to be one of the things that, like, when I'd go over to my dad's on the weekend and hang out with my brothers, we had a Bleach video game, so we used to always play that. And that was a vibe. And that was a vibe. And then when my dad would come home late from work, you know, we'd all sit by the foot of his bed and watch anime or Toonami together back in the day. So it's kind of near and dear to my heart. So my tats are anime references. And to kind of put a little bit of a cherry on top, my sister is the individual who does my tats. She does all my work. I will not go to anybody else. She will do whatever I end up getting for the rest of my life. So, and she's sweet, so I'd recommend go checking her out. But yeah, I'm a nerd. And then obviously you can see, I brought it up in a previous video. I got the symbol of sacrifice, the curse of sacrifice, the brand of sacrifice, aka the berserk mark. And I keep that on my neck just because every morning it reminds me, hey, we're sacrificing for a reason. We're in a cut. We're giving up all of these things for a goal, right? Giving up food. We're giving up the opportunity to go out. We're giving up everything I've given up so far, everything I'm going to give up in the future, everything I'm sacrificing with a goal in mind. So it kind of reminds me, keeps me locked. Every morning keeps me locked. So that's a win. But I'm a nerd, boys. I'm going to keep this stacked with you. I'm a nerd through and through. I've been a nerd since a little youngin'. But how I describe myself to a lot of people is just like, hey, I'm just a thick-necked nerd. I'm just a nerd whose hyperfixation is destroying his body and rebuilding it. In my off time, like it took me a long time to become the way I am now, to where like I'm fine with communicating. I'm not that shy in front of a camera anymore. I've built the extroverted version of me, right? I've just kind of learned these skills, put myself in environments where I had to become an extrovert year over year. But I'm an introvert by nature, boys. I am an introvert by nature. Let's hit this next set. But like I was saying, I'm an introvert by nature. Like a good time for me isn't necessarily going out. Like going out on the weekends is fun. I had that time frame in my life, you know, where I was going out, getting drunk, having a good time. Hey, that's fine. And I can acknowledge that's a good time. That's just not my cup of tea. A good time for me is like playing chess and watching anime. Maybe having a beer or two. And maybe if I do have a beer or two, just kind of sipping on it and yapping with the boys. You know, hanging out. Maybe going bowling. I really enjoy bowling. I really enjoy going to the Ren Fair. Oh, dude, the Ren Fair. I actually plan on this summer after prep hitting the Ren Fair, and I want to vlog that whole thing. So you guys can just peep me doing nerdy shit, and I'm excited for that. But I like doing nerdy stuff like that. Like that's my definition of a good time, is like being in the house on the weekends, getting my training in. After I get my training in, doing things like playing chess or watching anime, or if it's not anime, maybe it's like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a banger. It's just like, and then when I'm in the off season, like just big back activities, you know, that's fun too. You know, eating food. It's real fun. But like I said in my previous video, we are going to be a little bit more strict, a little bit more on plan this off season. So a lot less cheat meals, a lot less cheat days, and that'll be fine. And if I do have a cheat meal or a cheat day, I will account for that throughout the week. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a lot more carb cycling when I'm in the off season compared to what I've done in the previous. I kind of like a flatline diet to where I know I'm consistently eating the same thing every day. It's just consistently. Okay, awesome. And I'm just eating the same thing. Makes prep easy, makes preparation work for the food easy. When I go to a grocery store, I know exactly where everything's at. I can just snag it. I don't have to wonder where anything is. It's kind of beautiful. It's very, very easy mentally. So I kind of prefer that. But with that being said, to kind of incorporate a little bit of foods that I want to during the off season, I will be incorporating a little bit more carb cycling, a little bit more obviously pushing and pulling of the fats and then carbohydrates. not pulling the fats or pushing the fats too heavy, but just enough to where on my cheat day or my cheat meal, I can kind of account for those extra calories coming from obviously fats and then obviously coming from carbohydrates as well. But I mean, right now, I kind of live by the flatline diet. I just find that it's a lot easier, especially in prep. The flatline diet is just, it's easier mentally, it's easier preparation work wise to where now it's just like I'll have 12 containers in my car, not in my car, in my fridge. I know those 12 containers are going to last me the next 3 days. I'm just, I'll grab a container, go. Grab a container, go. Grab a container, go. It just makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot more strict to where I'm just, okay, I already know where it's at. I already have it prepped. Preparation was easy. It's the consistent variables. It's just the consistent variables for me, boys. I really fuck with that. But let's go ahead and hit this next set. One more. All right, boys. I'm gonna go grab the rope and then we'll get after the next couple sets. All right, boys, let's work. All right, 3 more, boys. All right, boys, let's get after this next set. All right, I want to say we got one more there, boys, and then we'll go out with it. All right, let's get this last set, boys. Ooh. All right, we're going to go out with it now. I'm going to go ahead, drop the weight a little bit, just because my biceps are cooked. And then I might be able to do a little bit of abs. I got to go to work still, boys, so kind of got to cook through it, but I think we might have time for some abs. All right, boys, let's hit this. Ooh, that's cooking me. We got 3 more there, boys. All right, boys, let's get this work. We got 2 more. All right, boys, let's work. Oh, 1 more set, boys. 1 more set there. All right, let's set, boys. Woo! All right, boys. I think we're gonna I do abs usually every other day, so we'll just probably do 2 or 3 sets. But I'll vlog that for you, boys. Hold on. All right, boys. Let's get a little bit of these abs. Two more, boys. All right, boys. Let's get this next set. Oh. All right, boys. As you can tell, my alarm is going off. I think that's a wrap for today. That being said, I'm gonna hit you boys with the outro. I'll see you there in the car. All right, boys, that's another one in the books. I feel like it was an overall good lift. I feel like I dropped some knowledge for you boys, and also feel free to fact check me. If you find some information that I may have been wrong on, please send me an article. I would love to learn more. One of the things that I tell people at the gym, it's like, dude, I've been doing this for 11 years. I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing. There's always something out there that I can learn more on, right? So if you have an article that proves what I said wrong, or you have an article that kind of piggybacks off of what I said, or just an article that kind of expands off that, feel free to send it my way. I'm always willing to learn. I'm always eager to learn. And I would love to have discussions on like this topic. If you guys even have questions, feel free to like reach out to me. We'd have discussions for hours. Like I said, I'm a nerd. What I do on my weekends is work out and then go home, play chess, watch anime. At the end of the day, if you want to chit chat a little bit, I'm always down to chit chat. But that being said, I feel like it was a great lift, and that's another one in the books, boys. And I'll make sure to drop this. I want to drop this tomorrow, right? There was a little delay. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, and that's because I got a new laptop specifically for editing, and it didn't upload the videos right away like I'd like to. I mean, that happens. It is what it is. But I want to drop this, have this out by Saturday. So with that being said, like I said, that's another one in the books, boys. And I feel like it was a great lift, and I'll catch you in the next video.